Lovely, lovely, lovely. So as already been stated, the talk title this morning is The Perfect Relationship, as we continue to explore this month's theme in Centers for Spiritual Living, which is love as safety. I'd like to start with two truths, at least I believe they're truths, about the perfect relationship. Number one, there's no such thing as a perfect relationship, much as they chose this for the topic. But number two, every relationship I have is the perfect relationship. Now you might say, hello Kimberly, those are contradictory statements, completely opposite. But I believe they're both true, and it kind of depends on our definition of perfect. As the reading indicated, if our definition of the perfect relationship is we gotta find that soulmate out there who believes what we believe, their hygienic habits are the same, their political leanings are the same, their views on money, never any conflict, well, it's not gonna happen, is it? We are each individual expressions of the divine, of the one life. Individual, right? So there's no two alike. Of course, we find that sweetheart, that partner, that soulmate who resonates most deeply with our deeply held values. But after that, there is no such thing as a relationship without conflict, without disagreement, and so on. But that's why we're here in Earth School, is it not? We incarnated in these bodies, and it's through relationship that we learn who we really are. We learn to embody the truth of who we are. We go deeper through relationships. Imagine a life where we didn't have them. Now that second one, every relationship is perfect. I do believe we call to us those people who help us learn and grow. And let's face it, oftentimes we learn and grow the most through the relationships that are the most difficult, yes? Yes. Yeah, the most challenging. So I'd like to talk today about how to allow our relationships to be our teachers, which they're meant to be. How to best nurture our relationships. Whether we're talking about a loving partnership, or we're talking about a friendship, a family member, even a coworker. Or the relationships we have in spiritual community. In the way of mastery, I love this quote. It says, there's an intelligence, a love that knows you better than you know yourself, and is presenting you moment to moment with jewels and gems and blessings and lessons, that something is weaving the tapestry of your life, and nothing is happening by accident. Nothing. All the relationships, all the events in our lives. The way of mastery talks about our saviors are those very people who get our ire up, that evoke the strongest emotional reactivity in us, because there is grist for the mill. There is where we need to go inside and go, what is going on? We've talked about this, I think, this month before, too. Those are the perfect situations for us to expand, to grow, to dig deeper, the cutting edge of where we need to look. Our practitioner, Elaine Clark, recommended a book that I picked up this week, and it is exquisite. I just love it. It's called The Gentle Art of Blessing by Pierre Pradervand. I know I already have 2 books of the month this month, so why not a third? There's a story in here that I wanted to tell you that just illustrates so beautifully what we're talking about. Pierre he had a lovely job in Switzerland in international development. He was working at a school system in Switzerland with both students and teachers. Loved what he did, felt he was making a difference in the world. And there came a time when the ethics of the people that were heading up his organization were completely in conflict with his own, and completely in conflict with what he felt were just basic ethical considerations. And he realized that as much as he loved the job, that he needed to quit. And he did. After he quit, he learned that the person in charge was really banking on his quitting, that the whole thing was engineered to get him to leave. And he was furious. He was riddled with resentment and ire. Now, he was a spiritual man, and he did prayer and he did meditation, and nothing seemed to help. He woke up each morning with this situation on his mind, feeling angry. He showered with it, he walked around with it. It was like a poison eating at him. And y'all know, if you've heard me talk much, my favorite quote about, carrying around resentment is like swallowing a bottle of poison and expecting the other person to die. It doesn't work. So he was pretty miserable. And then he came across one of the teachings of Jesus from the Sermon on the Mount, where he said, bless those who curse you. Bless those who curse you. And he had the thought, that's what I need to do. I need to bless my persecutors. And he began. And his definition of blessing is kind of interesting. I'm not going to be able to find it, so I'll ad-lib it. It's basically wishing the highest and best in all areas of life for the person you're blessing. And it needs to come from the heart. Now, at first, when he started blessing this man and these folks, it was really a head thing. It was, I need to do this. It was a conscious intention. But what he found is the more he did it, he began to feel it. And he felt love. And not only did he bless that man for years, but he found himself out in public blessing the bank teller and the children on the street and the noisy dog next door, blessing everybody. And he grew in joy and in love. It was an amazing, amazing experience. Fast forward a few years, Spirit arranged a synchronistic meeting. You know how Spirit has a way of doing that? He went to a conference where both he and this man who had been the demise of his old job, they were both members. And he saw the man, and he was surprised that all he felt when he looked at this man, he hadn't seen him since they parted, all he felt for this man was gratitude. Because it was through that experience that he discovered this art of blessing, and he began doing that. It changed his life. So it was this profound feeling of gratitude. Wow. And he says, he realized that even our enemies are the best friends for our growth. Love that story. So blessing, what a beautiful practice. Now there's a caveat here that I've made before. If we're in a relationship that is truly abusive, we're not called to stay there. I think we're called to set healthy boundaries, to leave, but there's no reason why we can't continue to bless that person, right? Forgiveness is so healthy for us, not for the other person, for us. Our founder of Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes, said this. He said, remembering that the Spirit holds no evil toward man and that God is love, we should emulate this divine lesson and forgive all, that our hearts may be free from our own condemnation. That's interesting. Free from our own condemnation. We're all one. We know that, so that when we condemn someone else, we're condemning ourselves. When we judge someone else, we're judging ourselves. Wow. Accepting others. Not trying to change anybody. Right? Sometimes that's hard not to do. I found some wisdom in some odd places this week as I was researching this topic from singer Beyonce. Listen to these words of wisdom. She said, love is an endless act of forgiveness. Forgiveness is me giving up the right to hurt you for hurting me. No payback, right? And author Alexandra Penny said, the ultimate test of a relationship is to disagree, but to hold hands. So again, not judging, listening, allowing the person to be them, accepting. Best practice for relationships, for sure. Thomas Merton said, the beginning of love is to let those we love be perfectly themselves and not to twist them to fit our own image. Otherwise, we love only the reflection of ourselves we find in them. Middle of the night last night, I woke up for some reason, picked up my Kindle version of the book that Danama and Janine have been doing the book study of. Marian Head's book, Revolutionary Agreements. And I guess there was a reason Spirit woke me up and I read it, because I went, oh my. I know those of you who are in the book study understand those are powerful, powerful 12 agreements she has written. Again, another book. I'm up to here in books, but it's a good thing. And here's what she said. I mean, there are 12 agreements, and I haven't read the whole book yet, but she said if you had to pick one agreement, the one agreement would be to be myself. It's interesting because we spent a whole Sunday on that a few weeks ago, the audacity of authenticity, right? To be myself, and it doesn't mean stridently putting it in somebody's face. It means compassionately communicating who I am, what I believe, and so on. But she says it's also accepting others for who they are. She talks about 3 qualities: truth, acceptance, and gratitude. So I live my truth, I accept the truth of who other people are, and I give thanks for each moment in relationship, each moment. Beautiful, beautiful guidelines, I think. Social behaviorist scientist Dr. Steve Maraboli said this: I find the best way to love someone is not to change them, but instead to help them reveal the greatest version of themselves. And I love that because that's what we're here to do in spiritual community. We're here to help each other reveal the greatest version of themselves, the grandest divine idea of who each of us is. That, to me, is the perfect relationship, whether we're talking about spiritual community or whether we're talking about our intimate partners. Isn't that the most important thing? It's akin to that Sanskrit word namaste that we talk about. You know, the divine in me honors the divine in you, or we might say in Science of Mind, the divine as me honors the divine as you. Beautiful concept. Again, our founder, Ernest Holmes, said this on the power of community. Wherever people meet together for prayer and spiritual communion, a field of faith is created that reacts upon everyone who enters. An atmosphere of reality with a capital R has been recognized. A new vibratory law has been set in motion. It's easy to break one twig, but if we bind many twigs together, they become unbreakable. In group consciousness, the individual faith of each member is strengthened through union with all the others. The individual faith of each of us is strengthened through our union with the group. I know that this is what happens here. Whether it's Sunday, the music, the message that may inspire, whether it's classes where we come together. You know, in a class on any given night, some people who come may be feeling down, feeling overwhelmed. Others will be on top of the world and others will be in between. But when we come together as a group, we're able to remind each other of the spiritual truth, even in times of challenge. And I've said many times before, I and the practitioners and ministers who teach classes, we're uplifted by being in that atmosphere. That's why we come together. So here we are, celebrating our 35th anniversary as the community committed to doing that for each other. Dr. Marilyn Leo sent me a little history, and I was kind of hoping she would give this, but she'll give her talk after service with some great pictures. But I wanted to give a little history. I wasn't here, needless to say, in 1982. But here's what she wrote. I'm going to read a few excerpts of what she wrote me last spring when we started to plan this celebration today. She said, on Friday, March 13th, Friday the 13th, 1981, Reverend Richard Leo, the bachelor minister of Santa Rosa, California, broke the hearts of the young women of that city to marry an outsider, Marilyn Armour. She was the daughter of Reginald Armour, who was a longtime minister and close associate of Ernest Holmes, founder of religious science. So they began to date, even though they had known each other 25 years previously. And then they began to look around for a retreat akin to a Silomar. Those of you who have gone to we used to have our CSL conferences at a beautiful retreat center on the Monterey Peninsula called a Silomar. They were looking for something like that to establish. So they looked at real estate both in Northern California and here in Oregon and found 40 acres in the hills above Medford, Oregon. They bought it, the Morrison Creek property, built their home and a center. Now in May of '82, Richard announced to the Santa Rosa community that he was leaving. They took up a special offering, and Marilyn said they gave them $500 to help start the new church, and up they came. Now here in the valley, being avid Science of Mind followers, they wanted to find like-minded people. And there had been a study group, I think it was in Jacksonville, but it was no longer here, and Marilyn finally found it up in Prospect. So Thursday night, she and Richard drove up to Prospect to be in that study group, but when fall came in and winter on its heels, it was kind of hard to think about making that trip, so it was time to start a center here, which they did. They drew up the legal documents in 1982. 3 people on that original board, Marilyn, Richard, and Marilyn's mom, Elsie Armour, started the nonprofit. They met at the Holiday Inn on the corner of I-5 and 62, and then many other places, and went by many names. It was Medford Church of Religious Science and many names, but the thing is, it kept going. Different ministers, different leaders. For a while, after Richard and Marilyn left, there was, let's see if I can find her name in here. You can prompt me if you can think.
Linda Wilson.
Linda Wilson Hunt. Yes, you can see pictures in a moment of some of these folks. And they met at the Labor Union building on Grape. They met many different places. In '85, Marilyn entered ministerial school, or was in ministerial school, studying to be a minister, like her husband. And then there were people that were around. Let's see, is Jackie Perkins here this morning? I don't think so.
No.
Bob and Jackie Perkins were among the very original people in that congregation.
Well, they came not too
A little
long
later.
after the beginning. Starla and Jim Haas were here.
Yes, Starla and Jim Haas were the next people. Raise your hands for us, Starla and Jim Haas. Yeah. I mean, really pillars of the community all these years. Starla now our treasurer, amazing job. And Jim, I don't think anybody entered this morning without being greeted by Jim, who has a shy personality, but he overcame it. I know, I said, blinded by the light this morning. So, you know, we've really been blessed. I mean, even before I came, as you probably know, Neil Donald Walsh was speaking on Sunday for almost 2 years and on the board, but we didn't have a minister officially here full-time. But it was the volunteers, Patricia Van Evera and the rest of you who kept this Will Richardson. I'm gonna
Sundays.
Frank and Kathy Young and the Sundays, who kept it going. Danana, they kept it going. Amazing, because there was a commitment to what being in community meant. So we're grateful to all of those who came before. So grateful to Marilyn and Leo and Richard for starting this. So, wrapping up this little history, Marilyn wrote, the Southern Oregon area has been a growing mecca for international new thought thinkers, speakers, and authors. So true. Look what's happened since I'm here even. Dr. Arlene and Harvey have moved in. This is a minister who's been in the ministry for 42 years, I think it is, right?
Who's counting?
All right, who's counting? Linda, Rapond, and Walter. I mean, we went from 2 practitioners, Frank Young and Jim Smith, when I arrived. Now we will, after today, have 12 practitioners. That includes the 3 ministers. So it's just amazing. And I am so grateful to be a part of this. So I have been blessed for about 19 years since I've been involved in Science and Mind to always be a part of community. One of the reasons I became a minister is because I knew the value in that. A spiritual community to help lift me in my own times of doubt, fear, transition, challenge. And for some of us, when we find that place that supports us in our feeling of truth, we're drawn to make a commitment, a choice to say, I want to belong. Today, we celebrate 6 people who have made that commitment and signed a covenant to become official members of our CSL Rogue Valley community. So I would like to, I'd like to ask them to come forward, and maybe we could hold our applause, and Aaron's going to play a little song for us, right? I'm going to ask them to come forward, and then once they're all up here, we'll applaud them. Interestingly enough, I heard the term from one of them, because some of these folks were members previously, found other places where they were spiritually fed and are coming back, so they're remembers. Some of them are remembers.